much because of this show, but because they know that Brother Glenn and Sister Gwen and others in the Inter-Island Communication of Station of Families have denoted that this station is Bermuda's talk show station. And so therefore, if you want to have live commentary or live interaction, this is a station to be on all through the day and every day, 24/7. And so I thank you again for joining us. I want to certainly start, as I always do on some days, with a bit of a somber note. And that somber note is to recognize the passing of Bishop Duncan, Bishop Lloyd Duncan. He is if you know him, or knew him, I guess, he's a bubbly spirit for sure, always talkative, always out in his dress. My goodness gracious, he certainly made a statement in his dress. A big laugh, big voice, could sing and do all kinds of different things, and was a stalwart in the Christian community and in the broader family. And so we want to definitely extend condolences to his family, to his wife, to his children, to his broader family. And to just say, obviously, we never know what's going to happen to us. Some people get sick before they die, others pass suddenly. But no matter what, is never the right time, so we say. But we have to live each day as if we have to make a statement, because there is no one is promised for tomorrow. That's not a Christian statement, it's a real statement, which because we never know what's going to happen. So just want to say again to Bishop Duncan, to his family, to his extended family, to the Christian community, to the whole broader community, by the way, to his brothers, his sisters, and others, that your condolences, we do extend our condolences. He was, a person to know. I knew him personally, first of all, when we actually went together in the police service, and then he transitioned from the police service, ultimately to become a Christian minister, and then go from strength to strength. Definitely, like I said, a booming voice, a very, very memorable voice, delivery style, his just personality, a big personality. I keep saying that, and I know we used to chuckle when I see him, because the question sometimes was, well, what would he have on this time? Because you never knew. He definitely wasn't shy. And so again, one more time, we extend our condolences and look forward to the homegoing service, which will be an extensive one. Sometimes we have these 2-hour funerals, sometimes 3, and we just can wait and see how long this one's going to be. But again, we do extend our condolences in that regard. Clearly, there are others that have also suffered sicknesses, and in some cases, passing of loved ones. And also this time of year, person may be experiencing the first time it's the first time in whatever case may be, without that loved one. And so I want to make sure that we extend our condolences and just say that, we do care for you. And for those in the community, if you know someone that has lost a loved one recently, please reach out and just touch, smile, say hello, go by, sometimes just a word. And what I'm finding out now, to be honest, more and more, is that people just want somebody to listen. Just go by, sit there and listen, and listen, and listen. And that's what they would require for you to do. And so having said all that, tonight, again, is a fun night for me. It's been a good night. We'll talk more about the budget. In my media post, I did say that, as you know, I interviewed the Premier and Minister of Finance in his capacity as Minister of Finance, the Honorable David Burt, when he first delivered the budget. And then last week, we interviewed the Honorable Doug DeCudo, who is the Shadow Minister of Finance, both of them in the context of the budget. And what happened, which we knew or expected would be two big topics. One is the new corporate income tax, what the amount is and all those kind of things, and then how it's going to be used primarily in terms of repaying the debt. The conversation was around those 2 points. And so we're going to continue some discussion tonight. And also we're going to add in a little bit of extra, because I had people had asked me some comments about the recent pension reform that impacts all public officers, and I didn't have a show per se. I interviewed Dr. Anand some time ago from Bermuda College, but not so much about pension per se, but just his commentary on being a new person at the Bermuda College, taking over from Craig Simmons. But tonight we're going to talk particularly about some of the pension aspects, and mostly, to be honest, because I was quite surprised to have someone say to me that they believed that it's possible that as many as 1,000 people will retire or resign as a consequence of this pension legislation. And to me, that's unheard of, because no matter where those people work, that many employees going at one time would have a significant impact to any employer. And so we'll see. We'll talk some more about that. To talk about what is real, I do know that in conversation with the Minister of Finance, I don't know about David Burt, Premier also, that he obviously believes that's not the case. He, as the Minister of Finance, would have been one of the proponents for the amendments. But of course, there are many, many public servants, and we never know what people are thinking. And so what I hope to be able to do tonight is at least convey some accurate information. And then if there are questions, of course, we'll entertain those questions. And I hope also to pique the interest of all public officers that may be in that category, that are thinking about retiring or whatever the case may be, that they would press pause in my words and make sure you have a factual understanding of what's taking place, what is and what isn't, so that you don't prematurely make a decision which will impact your future and which may be unnecessarily. I do declare my personal interest because I am a retired civil servant. In that sense, I left before the retirement age, but then subsequently were able to get a pension. So I do declare my interest in that sense. And also, as a former accountant general, I had a particular interest in how the pension was administered, and I had to also interview persons before they retired. And so I do have some familiarity. I would admit, though, that my recent contact has been less than it was in the past, but I do have a fundamental understanding of the pension legislation as it impacts the public servants. And so looking forward to your questions, your comments in terms of that. But first of all, let's talk more about the budget, the 26-27 budget. And as I was thinking about tonight's show, I thought about, what's the actual context so people would actually, gravitate towards it. And I'll say this, that the annual budget process is a necessary legal process because it allows, ultimately, once it's passed, it allows the accountant general to authorize all government expenditure. In the U.S. context, we sometimes have a shutdown because there is no authorization to spend money. And so it won't happen in Bermuda because the governing party is able to pass legislation and it will get through because everybody understands that's necessity. But this process is such that in the event, except for last year when there was an election, there's a legal process by which it doesn't have to get done until later. But under normal circumstances, it's got to be done by March 31st so that on April 1, effectively the Accountant General can authorize all government expenditure. Otherwise, nothing can happen. And so that's the context, if you will, about the importance of the budget, why it takes place, what it is, and the ultimate impact is just that. It allows the government to spend money from April 1 of every year to the following March 31, and it's a process by which they talk about, number one, how much money has been allocated, why it's been allocated, and then the opposition gets a chance to ask different questions to make sure that everything is clear. And so again, thank you for joining us here tonight on Magic 102.7 on your Sunday evening for another edition of Insight. We're talking budget and pension reform. Our guest is the well-known Mr. Cordell Riley. I say well-known because he has many, many hats, and I was surprised because tonight I asked him what is going to be the caption that I put on my media things, and he said that it is social commentator, sorry. And I smiled because he has so many hats. And, he's a friend of mine. We've known each other for many, many years. We went to Academy together. And, we have a close relationship, even with our family in terms of being godchildren and those kind of things. And so, good evening, Cordell.
Oh, good evening, Anthony. And thank you for having me on your show tonight. I didn't realize it was just last week that you had the opposition finance minister on, because I started to watch a little bit of that before I came to sort of see what the opposition was saying, and because the finance minister was on the week before. So I'm actually honored to come behind two greats. Oh.
Okay, that's a good start. But let's, as I always say, let's start off in terms of, we think we know you, but let's give us tell us about what you're doing, and the I guess even to some degree, your expertise in this regard. And I'll ask questions if you don't give us a full answer.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to echo the comments you made about Reverend Duncan. Mm-hmm. He certainly was a very colorful figure, and anyone who's in the church would have known who he was. And I also want to extend publicly my condolences to my good friends Denton and Shirley Jarrett on the passing on of her mother, Helena Bryce, who was 102 years old, who passed away, who's well known in the development of young people. And so I would like to extend my condolences to that family.
Okay.
And of course, my wife is listening on. I don't know if any of my children, I know my godson, Gabe, he said he's going to be listening. Mm-hmm. So I just want to acknowledge those folk. I sent the flyer to my good friend down there in Bahamas, and he said he's going to be listening in, Jared Atlas. So I brought you some intel in addition to what you have already have tonight. So who am I?
That was exactly. Who is Cordell?
That was a question. I'm still trying to find out myself.
Fair enough.
Well, yeah, well, we, as you acknowledge, we've known each other, must be more than 40 years now.
Exactly,
correct?
yeah.
So, but the public knows me. I was at church this morning down at Ebenezer with Cyril
Yes.
Simmons.
St. George, yeah.
And, I'm going out, leaving the church, and this woman says to me, I know you from somewhere. Like, yeah, I know you from, and I know what they're saying, right? They're seeing me on television, they heard me on the radio, right? But when they see me in person, it's like, I know this guy, right? So, and I hesitate to hit the default button. Yeah, you must have seen me on TV, right?
Right. No, fair enough. Fair enough.
So I said that. I just, yes, it's so good to see you in person.
Yep. You'd be surprised.
So, so that's part of my personality. And I can tell you where that all started. It started when, for those 12 years, I was working for myself as a consultant. And my good friend Denton, who I just married, he used to, mentioned, he used to say to me, you got to pimp yourself.
Oh, my dear.
So what he meant is that you have to get out in the public eye because you are running your own business, and the public has to know who you are in order to acquire your services.
Yes.
And so I used to use my skills in market research and do these surveys, and sometimes do them once a year for the general public and put them out there. And so once I got the credibility, that kept going. And even when I wasn't putting out surveys, there were those on the media who would say, well, listen, this is coming up. Can you give me a comment on that?
Okay.
I was actually paid one time by the Bermuda Sun to come on. They said, we wish we could pay you more, for your skill sets. We should be paying you more, but we want to offer you something, And so they recognize that, you get called in to do things, but not necessarily the finance that goes with it. But I like the idea that they even gave that thought. And so I was doing commentary for the Bermuda Sun, and I used to do the same thing for the budget. So they would say, the budget's coming up. Can you write the budget? I remember one time Gary Marino had me on live, and that was like, I think, the most taxing, because the budget was just announced in the House of Assembly, and then he had me live commenting and ask me questions. I mean, boy, I was so nervous, because you could easily mess up on live television, but I guess I survived that. So it really started out from my perspective as being self-employed and getting my company's name out there.
Got you. And then clearly, though, you mentioned just now, but you're also very instrumental, I guess, in Bermuda in the context of doing proper surveys. When I say proper, meaning proper scientific surveys, as opposed, sometimes what happens is somebody mentions a poll which has not been done in a scientific mention. Can you just tell us real briefly in terms of how do you do a poll for 400 people and make it be relevant or in some degree accurate in the Bermudian context?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question, because it's becoming more and more difficult. So, and the question always comes up when you're doing polling: how is it that a 400 sample can reflect 40,000 voters, right? And so scientifically, we know, and I'm not going to go to in detail, but if you randomly sample your target audience. So if your target audience were voters in Bermuda, so that's the one I tend to use, right? So there's about 40,000 of them. If you do a random sample of that, meaning everybody who has an opportunity to be in the sample can be selected, then your results are likely to mirror the overall population within a margin of error. And so the more you survey, the lower your margin of error, which is you want. So in the United States, they would do 1,000. That represents, over 200 million voters. Okay. But the margin of error is like 1.3%. And here, our margin of error is about 4.9%. And what dictates that is really the cost. If you want to have a smaller margin of error, you have to pay more to get it done. So we generally go with 4.5% margin of error. So it's roughly about a 400 sample. Now, the challenge is now, right? So let's go back, say, 10 years ago, where a lot of people had landlines, etc. You have a better probability of getting of everybody who's eligible to be in that sample. It is far more difficult now And I saw, so my last surveys, technically speaking, I could be criticized because they were a hybrid sample.
Okay.
And that would meant I did the telephone sample, but I also did an online sample, and I merged the two.
Okay.
And so the purists would say, well, that's not totally scientific. But what happened was that my results actually did predict what was going to happen. And so I had a winning formula, and I used that because it was accurate.
Okay.
But we don't have a listing, for instance, of cell phone users. Right?
Okay.
So that's a huge part of your population that you're not going to reach, and that makes it very, very difficult to get a what they call a equal probability sample because you can't get everybody who's eligible to be in there to pull them out of the pool, right? And so it's becoming difficult. And so that's why I years ago used that hybrid method because it's working. But now, even I find on, say, for instance, I do some on Facebook, I do some on other social media, that is skewing still more towards the elderly. But then again, that's who's out there, really.
Okay,
and those are the ones who are voting. So they still actually can reflect. So I'm doing it to reflect voting patterns. What's going to happen, and I can say proudly that all of the surveys I've done politically got the right direction. Right.
Okay.
In other words,
even this time around, or always, or
yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I remember one time I did one for the Royal Gazette, and we put the results out, and the results were that, excuse me, the PLP was going to win with an increased margin. And nobody believed that. I think it was 2007?
Okay.
Yes. And nobody was believing that. And then I remember Bill Zuhl said, he called me up and said, we getting a lot of calls and people don't believe it, and why you hire this, this firm that nobody else knew about. And I was like, and I said, well, Bill, these are the methods that I use. I'm quite confident in the methods I use, and the election is in a few days' time. We'll find out what actually happened. Election came back. PLP increased the percentage share by 2%.
So you're correct.
So I was correct.
Wow. All right. And so I asked that question because for the general public to understand that there is a basis for which we do these things. And when we look at overseas and they say uphill has been done, it's the same or similar technology has been used in Bermuda to give results. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So having said all that, to the listening audience, again, thank you for joining us here on Magic 102.7 on your Sunday evening for another edition of Insight. We're going to have a conversation for about 30 minutes or so, 30, 35 minutes, I guess, maybe 45 minutes. But people will be encouraged to call in on 297-1027, or as always, send in messages or WhatsApp messages to 538-8683, or directly on Facebook where we are on Insight Bermuda. And so here we go. So overall, what comments do you have about the Bermuda budget 26-27?
Well, I think, when you're awash with a lot of cash, you can almost do anything. I think if you, one thing that stuck out between the 25, 26, and 26, 27 is that the budget was be balanced even without the corporate income tax.
Okay.
And
gotcha.
so, because the first thing I did was, well, what if we didn't have that money?
Yes.
Right? And it would still be balanced, which the Premier actually, to his credit, said that that's what he's aiming for.
Yes.
And so you can now look at the budget knowing that money is extra money, but if that money were taken away, we would still be able to balance the budget. A lot of the things that he wants to do with that extra money won't be able to be done, but the reality is that the budget would have been balanced. So that, for me, was a big takeaway.
Okay. And then, do you have any comments about the corporate income tax itself in terms of, just generally?
Well, it's good to have, let's say.
Okay, for sure.
It's certainly good to have money coming in and be able to do some of the things that you would like to do and not have the money to do it. So for me, I go back to the documentary, Something in Paradise by Sheila Cooper.
Yes, okay.
I can't remember the correct name. But anyway, I was interviewed in that documentary, and one of the questions I was asked was, if there was one thing I can do to help the poor in Bermuda, what would it be?
Okay.
And at that point, I said, we need to build houses for our people because, as you know, once you have your housing in Bermuda taken care of, then you can actually live. But if you're going to worry that 50-60% of your income is going to housing, you're always concerned about your situation. You're not free mentally.
Yes.
And so if you build houses for your people and you take that instability away, then a person could do far more things than what they're able to do with their income.
Right.
And so I was happy to see that the government is putting some money into housing. I think it's $200 million or something like that. It's not a tremendous amount.
Well, relative, but yeah.
But it's still it's an indication that is needed, and I certainly think it needs to be done primarily for younger persons, because we talk about getting Bermudians who are overseas coming back, but I think my immediate concern would be to do something for those who are here so that they won't leave.
Okay, fair enough.
And so one of the things that will prevent them from leaving is having adequate housing. And so that is something that, I'm pleased to see with the budget that they're doing something for housing. I don't know if it's geared towards young people, but the fact they're building, setting aside $200 million for housing, was it 200 houses, something like that.
Yes.
I think 200 is in there somewhere. I thought it
Yes.
was 200 million or 200 houses.
Houses, yes.
But the emphasis is the fact that they are putting money towards housing, and that's something I'm really pleased to see.
And so going in that route, it would be some time ago, I'm not sure if you remember, government built houses down in St. George's, down at South Side.
Yes.
And they built them at a cost of, let's say, $400,000.
Yes.
And sold them at $200,000, which means they
yes, that's right.
they sold them definitely at less than cost. And
Yes.
so what comments do you have in terms of, or are you proposing that be the same thing happen now in terms of government building houses and sell them at an affordable amount as opposed to whatever it costs to recoup?
Well, I think if they do some combination of that, because there are certainly those who will not be able to get into the housing ladder without that push, but there may be some who have, $50,000 that they can buy something, a little higher. So the government can do it like a means test, if they will. Something like that is definitely needed. There was a scheme at one point in the private sector of rent to buy.
Yes.
That's no longer the case. I think government had the same sort of thing as well, rent to buy, so that you put down, say $25,000, and then you got to, instead of a 20-year mortgage, maybe a 30-year mortgage. Obviously, going to pay off. It's going to cost you more in the long run,
Yes.
but it's affordable in the short term. And so it's those kind. I think they did something very similar with Laughlin's up there in Paget. They had,
Yes, okay.
They had a lower. A more probably. I think it's an extended mortgage, but. The point
Yes.
was that they were affordable houses, right? In terms of people can live in. And I think that's what, I would like to see. But my emphasis is on young people, those in their 20s and 30s who need, who working, but perhaps starting their families and, finding it difficult to get something that's affordable.
Well, okay. And so, so you suggest somebody who is like, say, 25 years old, maybe just starting to work, they would be just starting to workforce, graduated from university and back, or do you say it's going to be for everybody and just a question of how do you adjust the government policy to ensure that it can be affordable?
Okay, so the single person, right, they may have a little bit more flexibility, but those who are, contemplating starting families, those are the ones you want to give priority to.
Okay.
Right? Obviously, you want to deal with those in emergency state, right? But I said, again, my emphasis is on young people, because we don't want to see them leave, right? And there's a challenge in this country, as it is in most Western countries, because of the declining birth rate, because of the aging population. Any organization that requires young people to replenish it is struggling.
Well, okay.
Any organization, whether it be, we talked about, and we'll talk about this later, the government workers.
Yes.
If they were to leave, where are you going to get those persons from? You go to the churches.
Yes.
You find, that people are elderly. Who again you're going to replace them with? So any basic organization that requires youth for it to maintain itself, it's going to be struggling. So the thing is, you have to focus on how do we keep them here first.
Yes. Okay.
How do you keep them here, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that is, okay, they need jobs,
Yes.
right? And they need housing.
Okay. And then based on your background also, I made a note in terms of you talk about young people
Yes.
that think about starting a family, the importance of that in terms of what is the ratio now in terms of the annual birth rate to generate enough people to replace
We've gone below replacement. So replacement is say average of 2 children per family. We've gone below that. Now some countries have a very low, negative birth rate. Some have like close to 0, right? I don't think ours is that low, but it's certainly going below the replacement rate. So it's going below the actual technical is 2.2, but they've gone below 2. So we are not in replacement mode.
And there's a slight distraction there, but what would be a solution for that at the moment in terms of, well, I mean, and I'm smart, I don't know if you remember this also, by the way, because DM does not have a solution.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because that has been on my mind. In fact, I was thinking about writing an article about that very thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so what my good colleague is referring to is the statement, which was obviously taken out of context,
right?
Attributed. That's the word I'm looking. I'm glad you can read my mind. Attributed to the late Dame Lewis Brown Evans, and it was something to the fact that black people should be fornicating in the bushes.
Yeah.
And I think the context there was that if we don't repopulate, there will be people coming in to replace us.
Yes.
And so we should go and have more and more children. So I think I'm going to take the biblical point of that, is that go forth and multiply.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
And that's basically what she was saying,
yes.
right? But she said it in a term that was provocative.
Yes.
And so go forth and multiply, because then there's going to be lots of Bermudians. But what happens is the wealthier the nation becomes, the less children they have. And so the first thing they do is pull back, right?
That's interesting.
So back in our day, right? You know how many children your parents have.
Yes.
You know how many children my parents. My grandfather, for instance, had 17 children.
Wow.
Right? That ain't happening today, right? My wife, we had 4 children, as you well know, right?
Yes, and kudos, ladies, you're listening, kudos to you. 4 girls, and oh my good gracious me.
That's not happening today. That's rare,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Most couples either have 1 or none.
Whoa.
Right, that's where we are. And when he said that to me, and I started asking them, how many children? They would say, "Oh, we can't afford. We only have 1, and that's all we're having, or they don't have any." Right? And so we see it playing out, right? But the end result of that is that, and you can have less Bermudians. So I go to restaurants now. Before, first thing I used to say, "Well, where are the Bermudians serving me?"
Right.
Now I understand there aren't going to be.
Yes.
There may be some. We're lucky if we do get some, right? But the reality is that the ones that are there, when they go, there's going to be no Bermudian or very few Bermudians to replace them. And so that number is going to continue, the number of Bermudians in the workforce, even though it's still, I think, around about 68%.
Right.
But if you look at the lower, the restaurant industry, or those, look at the minister. He just opened up, bartendering?
Yes.
That was never on that list. And so now that's opening up. And why is he doing that? Because there aren't sufficient Bermudians in those positions. So going back to Dame Lewis Brown Evans, she was saying, this is what's going to happen if you don't go and have your children.
Yes. And that was also tied to status and the rest of it.
And all of that. All of the challenges that we would have as black people at that time.
Yes.
Yes, because there were so many forces against us. And, they had the 3-year vote.
Yep.
You didn't even need to have status. You just be here for 3 years and you're eligible to vote. So all of these things were against us. And she was saying, you need to go and have more children.
Yes, got you. And then that was an aside, but it was an intentional aside in terms of it's going to have an impact. And so it impacts certainly healthcare, all about pension. We're going to talk about pension in a minute, but it's all those, we need more people to be available to contribute to the overall economy in order for Bermuda to be sustained. So it is important. The challenge, I guess, as you said, and I had a conversation about this yesterday, by the way, in terms of the reality for young people. And so this budget is important in the context of what's being done for young people, what's being done for all of us. Bermudians in that case, and it's not a question of trying to discriminate against non-Bermudians. It's a question of what do you do to sustain Bermuda in the longer term, and if in the instance that we don't do that, we have some issues. And before I go further, I'll ask you a quick question in terms of there's been lots of commentary around the opening of the Fairmont Southampton.
Yes.
In terms of the need for Bermudians, but the reality that there is not going to be enough Bermudians, which means more input persons coming into Bermuda, which means a change in Bermuda's culture, Bermuda's dynamic. And so, what comments do you have about that?
Well, I'm going to wear my Bermuda college cap right now.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm teaching tourism this term, so I'm
Oh, wow.
back in the classroom
Okay.
after, formerly in the classroom. I did teach for APACE, and I still teach for APACE, but now I'm back on the academic side after a long hiatus. And so I was thrilled when I was asked to teach tourism, and so we've been teaching about the impact of the Southampton Princess. We looked at it from an economic point of view, the multiplier effect of what this means, and the job multiplier effect, all of that in terms of what the revenue that comes in. But yes, and I said to them, I asked the class, what is going to happen when that hotel opens up in terms of jobs? And then some would say it's more jobs, and,
Right.
And I said, so you have to probe, a little more. So what else is going to happen? And eventually they say, well, people might move there. I said, exactly. So, people are going to look at that hotel and say, that hotel is affiliated with so many more properties around the world. What I don't get up and pay, I might be able to get in terms of benefits.
Yes.
I remember when I was there when it was under the Princess brand.
Yeah.
I was able to go to the Acapulco Princess in Mexico. I was able to go to the Bahamas Princess
To work or as
as a guest.
and pay less, of course.
You go as a VIP.
Whoa.
You get a letter take with you that Mr. Riley is coming here, and and you get a call from the manager. Mr. Riley, how's your stay? How's everything?
Okay.
Oh no, you got VIP service. So it was for me fantastic. I was in my 20s then.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
So can you imagine me traveling? I remember when I was going to the Acapulco Princess, and I flew into Mexico City, and I took an overnight trip to Acapulco, and the people on the tour, and I told them I was staying at the Acapulco Princess. They didn't believe me because that was probably the most luxurious hotel, other
okay.
than these boutique hotels.
Yes.
But it was one of the most luxurious hotels in Acapulco. And here I was in my 20s, a young black guy, and I'm talking about I'm staying at the Acapulco Princess.
Okay.
So then luggage was taken off the bus, and they said, "Who's going to Acapulco Princess?"
One here.
Only one hand went out, and they said, "Oh, he really is going to the Acapulco
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Princess."
Wow.
So it's those kinds of benefits that, and of course it's a new hotel.
Yes.
So it's going to pinch people from other properties, and then they're going to have to replace the people that left their property, which means you're going to have to bring in people. That's
Gotcha.
the bottom line.
And with that, listen, audience, what's your comment there in terms of preparation? Because right now, as you said, we already complain about the fact that there's so many number of Bermudians walking around, whatever. There's a very low employment rate,
Yes,
and so that means that not Bermudians available in any event.
correct.
So what do you say?
So
Where are you going to find them?
So you're not going to find them. So what you do is you want to make sure that those in the industry are really trained up and they can move up the ladder. And so we're gearing towards that. Bring them in, get them trained, so that once they get those jobs, they can go up. That's the extent of what we can do in terms of those out there in the workplace and looking to be in the workplace now. But that doesn't help a hotel that's opening up and you've got 350 staff that are Bermudian and you need another 350 more.
Yes. Okay. And that's interesting then, and it's a segue, but in terms of the tourism impact, what have you teaching your class, or what's your thoughts in terms of we have a housing shortage. You can bring these people in, where will they stay?
Okay, so we talk about, that as well. That's kind of a side topic, right? But when you bring people in, they're going to need places to stay. Are they going to compete against Bermudians? And I also talk about the Airbnb taking out the 1 and 2 bedroom places, the ones that are really in demand, and that's critically impacting on your housing stock.
Yes.
So again, you need to be able to bring in people. I know the former Princess or Fairmont Princess had, or Fairmont Southampton had their own housing.
Yes.
So there's dorms within the hotel, and then they had for families. They had one up there. It was at Dunscombe Road.
Okay.
They had their. I don't know how much that holds, but that was recognized years ago that they had to provide housing for their staff, and so that's another thing that has to be done. Providing the housing for the staff so that it doesn't critically impact on Bermudians.
Well, that's going to be interesting because, like I said, the hotel is scheduled to open at least on a phased approach this year, and so we're not going to be able to produce the houses. That's for sure in that short time frame. So it'll be interesting to see what takes place. And also, what I'll add to that is that you have the potential for displacement because if you're the hotel, I'm coming to Bermuda, I have to have housing, and it's not going to be available. You're going to have to pay me more or somehow subsidize my housing, which may not be given equally to the Bermudians. And so that creates another challenge, some more tension in the workplace.
Well, that's something that should have been thought of previously and sort of had a plan in place for that. That, this is what I'm going to negotiate with the hotel, that, housing allowance, if it's given, all should be extended to Bermudians, or you've got, in order to level that playing field.
But I guess, the challenge with that's going to be if, from the hotel point of view, if they have to, quote unquote, suddenly provide some sort of housing support for their entire staff, that's going to change the business model, and which may then, will then impact the financial success of that property.
Okay, and I accept that. But if I'm a worker and I see that my foreign colleague, is doing the same job as me, but they're getting a housing allowance, then I'm going to say I live in the same country.
Yes,
I have to pay the same bills. So who's helping me out? So there's got to be some sort of balance there. So I think previously the model was that you stayed in the hotel. Part of that would be deducted from your pay, so that you can tell the Bermudian, okay, if you want the same benefits, it's going to be deducted from your pay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and you stay in the dorm in the hotel. If you're a single person, that's fine. But if you're a family, that may not be an option for you. So I think, you can look at this and, for every problem, there's a solution. We just may have not found it as yet. So these are the things that are going to we're going to be challenged with.
Right.
And these are the things that we should be working out now if we haven't worked them out already.
Okay, fair enough. And to listen audience again, thank you for joining us here on Magic 102.7 on your Sunday evening for another edition of Insight. Our guest this evening is our social commentator, Mr. Cordell Riley. He has many, many hats that he wears. Tonight he's wearing that hat. And we're talking budget, 26-27 budget. And then the next hour, for the last hour, we're going to talk about the government pension or the public service pension reform, because that's been quite relevant. And many have been asking about that. And so we're going to try to provide some factual information, or at least some help people to better understand what it is and what it isn't, and we'll have some comments in that regard. So I want to touch at this point in time on healthcare. Do you have any comments in terms of healthcare? I know that the government is now putting more money towards healthcare. There've been many, actually, good. A lot of these things go back to the same idea of a reducing population, because the more they pay into it, the less it becomes for everybody else. And so healthcare is the same thing. We have, I guess, the contradiction now between, or the paradox, I guess. You have less young people in the system who are paying, and more elderly people who actually require more. So people are going out, but also there's a smaller population base. However, those that remain require more health care. And so therefore you have that, imbalance of the economy. So what's your comments or thoughts about that?
Well, that's something, because of where we are, it can't be avoided. And so, again, with the corporate income tax, I think government is putting more into healthcare. I saw something also in terms of the $38 million that's due to the hospital workers. So the standard benefit is going to increase as a result. So I was not happy to see that.
Okay, fair enough. Yes,
because that's more cost on the individual. And I would thought, okay, couldn't that have been covered by the corporate income tax, for instance? Because I think government is using some of that money to hold on prices, like I think government fees are being held on and other things like that. But this one would, because the commitment to the hospital, there's that $38 million that has to, I think 19 is coming from the government and 19 coming in from the increase in the cost of the standard benefit.
Right.
So, I think we all know the healthcare costs are quite high, and we all want something that is affordable as we approach our retirement age, right?
Yes.
As we approach that retirement age, one of the things that we become concerned about is increased health costs. And one of the things that's kind of heavy in my mind, because, at the college they did raise this early retirement last year, and government sort of, if you will, extended it this year, until, you can take it until, 2027, right? No, I'm saying the fact of what they did is basically an early retirement plan. And so what that has done is caused people to look at, their station in life. And one of the things that comes out of that is your healthcare costs.
Yes.
And so since I'm reviewing these things, one of the things I've learned, particularly with North America, is that if you retire at 65, based on research, your first major health challenge is likely to hit you within 18 months of retirement. So you would just have gone 66 before your 67th birthday. You're having to face a hip replacement or this or that, right? And so after that, your costs tend to, increase. And so the argument is made that you should go way before 65, and then you have more of quality time in your life because you're not faced with these major challenges before you even hit 70. So I'm saying that's on average. Obviously, that doesn't affect everybody, but that's something to factor into the equation, and it sort of pushes the balance back into favor of early retirement.
Okay, I was aware of that, and we'll get to that some more certainly in terms of the pension company. No, that's interesting in terms of what the research shows, because the idea is for a lot of people you work for most of your life for sure, and you want to get to a point whereby when you retire you're able to enjoy it.
Yes.
But I'm just saying that there is research to show that the enjoyment may happen, but there are milestones, negative milestones that you'll reach.
You could face.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. And so we'll come back to that in a minute. Next comment is in terms of, well, you can decide whether you want to comment on this or not, but do you have any comments in terms of the government approach to financing versus the OBA approach in terms of the responses or in terms of what the thoughts are around how this money can be used?
Well, I didn't catch most of it. I started to watch some of what the opposition was saying. I think the overall thing from what I've heard was that, any sort of institution that gets an influx of capital like that or finances like that is able to do far more. And if you're able to balance the budget at the same time, it's very little to criticize in terms of what you're doing with that money. So some of the early criticism is spending it correctly, and we need to pay down the debt, right?
Yes.
And then there's advantages in paying down the debt. But there's also advantages of taking care of people's needs, so their basic needs. So for me, that would be housing. I think there's enough money in there that you can do both of those things. I think government's committed to have the debt paid off within the 10 years or something like that.
Right.
And they're going to use some of the money to pay down the debt. I think the Chamber of Commerce was applauding that. So I think there's some positive moves there. I'm not sure what were some of the negatives from the opposition.
Well, to like you said, to spend more, and I know they wanted to pay
more of the debt.
Put more of the debt down. Yes.
No, I don't necessarily agree. I understand why they would say that, and I'm all for paying down the debt. But I think we, can use some of that money to impact people's lives, because what you see happening under Biden and even under Trump was that they're lauding how well the economy is, but people are saying, I don't feel it.
Yes.
And so our economy is doing well, but if you walk in the street, they'll probably say the same thing. I'm not feeling it.
Well, that's interesting. And again, I think of the social commentator that your hat's on tonight, it's to give comments around what's happening in the community. And you're right. Many people are saying that, yes, you are doing well, you broadly speaking. However, I am not doing well. And so they do want to feel the actual impact. And therefore, not speaking for the government, but I know the government has decided to do things such as reduce your car relicensing, for example. As you said, to put money into the health system to reduce that cost and to do some other things, and certainly to help seniors and the rest of it. And so it's interesting that you make that comment in terms of you would agree, or you commented on positively in terms of some money, yes, for the debt reduction, but some money to help people so they actually feel it in their pockets, as they say, and also to keep the cost down. Having said that, let's jump to that for a minute in terms of this constant cry for or push for or comment about the cost of living in Bermuda. I know you have a statistical background and all those kind of things. And so what are your thoughts around that? And I also know that I believe that you were very organized in terms of at a point in time when you went to buy groceries. You had a particular list and you were able to go things and focus on optimize your income at that point in
Well,
time.
yeah. Well, if you have 4 children and 1 income, you're kind of forced to do certain
Okay,
things.
no, fair enough.
right?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So yeah, that gave me a real insight in terms of costing. But I should say, one of the things I often said to myself during that period was that I wasn't so much bothered by the cost of food, right? Because I can always trade down, right?
And what does that mean?
Okay, so let's use this example that happened at one of the forums years ago. When this whole thing about cost of living and came up and ways to reduce the cost of living. So one, I think, vendor who brings in products said, well, we can bring in these products, which will be a few dollars cheaper than the one you buy on the shelf.
Yeah.
Right? So let's use the famous one, Hellmann's mayonnaise. And
Yes.
I remember
Oh, my dear.
because that was the one that came up. So they said, we can bring in this brand that's going to be $3 less than the brand that you buy.
Yes.
And, Hellmann's. And so that would be a way of saving your, cost. So if you do that over a number of products, you will have substantial savings. And I remember this woman got up and said, no, but I like that brand. That's the brand I like. And then the vendor says, and that's the reason we bring it in. Because if we brought in that product, it will sit on the shelf.
Yes.
But if we brought Hellmann's, even though it's costly, you're going to still buy it because that's the brand you like. And that's the challenge. They say that we are brand conscious when it comes to
Very much so, yes.
to food, when it comes to clothing and all of that. We're very much brand conscious. So even though that those prices are higher, we'll somehow make those sacrifices for it. And so, I've been listening to this Jewish podcasts lately, and I'm like, the insight that I'm getting from that is just tremendous. So I've been a millionaire from that. Listened to that when I was in my 20s. But
Right.
one of the things that they said is that, people tend to think that, say, for instance, the new iPhone costs, say, $1,500 or whatever.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And he said, if you have $1,500 to spend, people say they can afford it. He says, in the Jewish community, that's not what's done. You can afford it when you have $3,000 to pay for it.
Yes.
So you always have money there. But what we do every year or every 2 years?
I don't know, but yes.
We're
Yes.
trading up to the latest. We'll never accumulate any kind of wealth because we're so much involved in consumerism. And so just listening to these little nuggets, and you can make very small changes in your life that will affect your income and your revenues for your lifetime.
That's a big statement because you are right in that certainly. Actually, when Dr. Anand was on the show, right, he kept talking about or referencing people as being logical, and I'm saying that they're not logical because you would think, without being offensive, that the lower income person would buy the lower priced products. That doesn't happen necessarily because sometimes, like you said, with Hellmann's mayonnaise, no matter how much that person earned, they went to Hellmann's mayonnaise, and whether it was $4 extra, they still buy it. And so, my comment to the listening audience is to be very mindful and be very intentional about your purchases. Unfortunately, you have to think about what is my income or what is my station in terms of what you buy, and don't just buy because you want it, sort of thing. And that's a lesson to learn. It's a hard one because others will say back to you, well, I can buy what I like, and yes, you can.
Yes.
However, there's a consequence to that choice
Yes.
that you have to live with later on.
Yeah. Last week, the Bermuda College had a career fair, and I was asked to speak on critical thinking.
Whoa, okay.
And one of the things I raised was using this, I'm going to call it Jewish wisdom,
Yes.
about, what I just mentioned.
Yes.
But also he had another nugget, which one I've always practiced. That is, they never buy electronics brand new.
Oh, yeah?
No.
Oh,
He said they always buy refurbished. So he gave the example of a car. A car depreciates in value maybe 30% the minute you put it on the pavement.
Yes.
Right? So why would you buy a
Well.
brand new car when the minute it hits the pavement, it's already devalued 30%? And so the computer that I have now, and I think that's probably my second MacBook, right?
Well.
The first one was bought refurbished. The second one was in Florida in 2024, and I was looking at the open box, and they had one that was probably maybe $300 or $400 less. And what an open box item is something that somebody bought,
yes,
and for whatever reason they returned it to the store.
Yeah.
So they still had the paper on there as if it was brand new. But I was able to get that for a few $100s less than the normal cost. And so that, like I said, that is something I've practiced. So, but if I bought everything I get brand new, mind you, there are some things I bought brand new, like this little baby here. I bought this brand new. So there are some times when I do buy things brand new. But most of the stuff, in terms of electronics,
Yes.
That's how I managed to do it.
Well, and that's interesting because, people would say, oh, you're being cheap or you're being stingy or whatever the case may be.
I'm being
and,
wise.
And, and again, same comment is that we will tend to stand at a distance and say, oh, I admire this person, or he's done so good, or he's lucky, whatever the case may be, not understanding what decisions have been made to get to that point.
Yeah.
And the one you just said, I could just imagine for the average person to think they're never going to buy a brand new phone. No way. They buy the brand new phone every year, for example, which, clearly, and I'll be careful about this, you can do what you want with your money, but there is a consequence, like I said later on, in terms of other stuff you may want to get. You're not going to be able to necessarily accumulate funds if you're spending your money, quote unquote, unwisely.
And that's the critical point. If you have lots of money, it doesn't matter. You can buy whatever you want, right? But if you don't have and you're trying to accumulate some wealth, you got to look at your spending habits.
Yes.
Right? And there's certain things that you can control. And if you want to get this, maybe that's your thing, but you're cutting back in other areas.
Yes.
Right. So, but your goal, like I said, I was forced into that because I had 4 children on one income.
Yes.
And so I had to make every decision was intentional.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. And again, for the listening audience, you have 4 daughters, have and had obviously for all this time, and managed. And, obviously quite successfully now that they're all, obviously all adults now, right? The youngest one is
22, I think,
Got you.
2003.
Got you.
Oh, she gets 24 this year.
Got you. And I do commend you, and to Liz, of course, who is listening. Just incredible.
23 this year.
Just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So, okay. To go back to the idea of purchasing food, by the way, and listening audience, this is about the budget. I had a conversation again today. Well, I listened to somebody talk about it today in terms of buying chicken. And their comment was that they normally buy, I think it's called English chicken, at a certain price. And then when somebody else bought chicken at a lot lesser price, and without looking at anything else, their comment was, why is the chicken so less? Something must be wrong with it. And so it's interesting you bring that up in terms of, we do have this mentality that says that if, I use the example can of cream, if cream is normally, say, $4, and for some reason now $2, the first thing we have is something's wrong with it, as opposed to, oh, wow, it's a good price. The others have been priced in extortionately or something like that. And so that's an interesting concept.
Well, you reminded me of a conversation I had with Dr. Bradshaw. Now, what's this? Michael Bradshaw.
Oh, yes.
I think he's a biologist.
He is, yes.
Yeah. And he said to me one time, he said, the Bermuda, food in Bermuda is pretty secure. How often do you hear people getting food poisoning from eating food in Bermuda? It's rare.
Correct.
He says, because we have pretty good health policies in place that prevent that. So you go in there and you see something that's on the shelf that doesn't look right. The 99.9% chance that is not going to get you sick. What we do is look at it and say, that doesn't look, we're not buying that. Right? And then you add in the fact, well, because it's, $4 a pound when the other one's $8 a pound, I'm definitely not buying that one. And so we buy the $8 a pound. When you buy the $4 one and you find there's nothing wrong with it, it may be closer to its sell-by date, right? Whereas this one is just put on the shelf. So it's those things. But when he's told me that, my concern about the food in Bermuda.
Yes. Gotcha. And just to emphasize that point, Bermuda has such stringent regulations in terms of what comes into the island that you're right. What's here is going to be safe. There is a push, there's a push, though, in terms of trying to now extend the purchasing place for food to come to Bermuda to have a bigger impact on cost. So we have lesser costs. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out in terms of, will the government allow a broader variety of places for food to be imported from or not?
Well, I think the main thing would be the concern for safety.
Yes.
If you can guarantee that we have the same standards in terms of safety as we do now,
Yeah.
then I think people will be more relaxed in terms of bringing in a wider catchment area
Sure.
if it's going to result in lower costs.
Gotcha.
But if there's concern that in lowering the cost, you're going to lowering the standards, then I think most people say no, they wouldn't,
Right.
they wouldn't go for that. But right now, I'm quite happy with the standards. And like I said, you can't think of the last time you got food poisoning.
Like, true,
Now,
yeah.
so sometimes when you do, it's very extreme, and you
Yes.
don't want to go back there.
Sure.
But it's rare in Bermuda for that to happen.
Gotcha. And again, as you said, also there are standards, house standards in terms of cleanliness and food preparation. And so, which recently there was the article in the paper
Yes.
about certain establishments that
Yes.
failed. And they're correct. There was one also, I'm not going to mention the name, whereby there was a major mistake.
Yes,
And so
yeah.
thankfully that was actually cleared up, but they still almost lost business as a result of that.
Yeah, so you got to
And
be
so
honest
careful.
because now, because that list used to be not publicized. The grades that the restaurants get and the food
Yes.
service used not to be publicized. Now it's available. In fact, I downloaded it because I think I'm going to introduce it to one of my classes.
Oh, nice.
At some point,
Yes.
to get and talk to about maybe food service, but. Yes, it's good because we should be living in the age of transparency, right? You shouldn't be able to hide behind something, and therefore it causes you to be more accountable. This is what happened, and this is what we're doing. If they had simply said that we're waiting for the health license, then they would have been in the clear.
Yes.
That's all
Yes.
they had to say. We had to close because we do not have a health certificate as yet.
Wow.
And people would have said, "Oh, okay, yeah, we understand that. You need to be passed before you open up." Yeah, that would have taken them off the hook.
Wow. That's interesting. Wow. Okay. So
They should hire me as the PR person, huh?
well, again, that's another opportunity for you. Before I go off let me press pause a minute. For the listening audience again, our guest tonight is Mr. Cordell Riley. You're here on Insight on Magic 102.7 your Sunday evening for another edition of Insight. I'm your host, Anthony Richardson, and we're talking about Budget 2627, and we're about to start talking about the recent reforms around the public service, the pension for public officers, and we will explain who that impacts and those kind of things in a minute. Before I go there, though, I want to just touch base for Mr. Riley in terms of what is your comment in terms of the current regime around housing, right? In that the Rent Control Act or Landlord-Tenant Act really dictates the interaction between homeowners of a certain tax land valuation band. What I was shocked, to be honest, and I realized it maybe 2 years ago, that the government actually controls more than half of the housing stock in Bermuda based upon the fact that the ARV is
Below a certain
below
level.
that. I was flabbergasted, to be honest, because it means that the government can effectively use its own levers to impact the private sector in terms of housing prices or rental prices. And I still find that to be amazing, by the way. But what's your thoughts about that from your overall social commentary point of view, your whole background, really?
Well, I wasn't aware that they control more than half. That is phenomenal. I think, obviously there's in a capitalist society, you want to have free market or something that's close to what was termed as free market,
Yes.
as opposed to controlling the market. And I think we're into the price control with regards to housing,
Yes.
because you need to house your people. So it goes back to that basic concept. You need to house your people. So we're going to control these range of houses because we don't want you to be increasing the price so that those at the low end cannot afford it. At the same time, if there is increasing demand on those units, then the price is going to go up. Now, in past years, take out of the equation those not in rent control and in the open market.
Yes.
There are people that say renting their 2-bedroom for $2,500, and somebody coming in and say, "I'm giving you $3,500 for it."
Yes.
And you only wanted $2,500. That's because of demand. So it's kind of to prevent that lower income, those lower houses, to be in that sort of bidding process. So it's always difficult to strike a balance, because if you're a homeowner, you're in a capitalist country.
Yes.
Why can't I get the maximum amount for my property.
That's right.
Right? There could be a balance that's struck in terms of requiring the homeowners to have a certain level of upkeep, so that you're not renting out something that is substandard
Sure.
for a higher price. If you want to get that price, you have to have these things in place. So I think that needs to be looked at.
Okay.
And come up with some sort of compromise. And I would think, okay, you want to move up? Here's what you got to do.
Sure.
Right? And then you got to put the money in. And then, of course, we hear, the 4 and 5 number of millions in a 2-bedroom house and do it, And I think another outlet had an expose on that, and
Yes.
I talked to people about and had to showing the rooms where they're living in. And I've actually, from my own experience, one time I was looking at this house. So we're looking North Shore, had beautiful views, and they said, "Oh, we have an apartment that's rent. It's currently rented by a number of millions." And it was like 4 beds into this very tiny property, 1 bed, and then the kitchen was like kind of back in, back out. But there were 4 people in a place that would probably was just suited one person.
Well, got you.
But that's where that's what that was doing years ago. This was before the pandemic. And so you had that sort of thing in there. If you kind of had controls in that, but see, the government doesn't control how many people you can have in
Correct.
the house.
Yes.
Right? So the government be doing that. I mean, these things have to be looked at. I'm not going to advocate for or against, but I will advocate that you have to look at it because, one, you want to make sure you house your people. So I'm going back to my bully pulpit. You got to house your people. Right, on the one hand,
Sure.
right, and if we're going to remain in this capitalist country, how do you allow people who see an opportunity to make money off their real estate?
And before I go right off that too, the question would be, we keep on saying that there is actually a housing problem in Bermuda, right? And we contrast that with the fact that so many people have left. And so I always ask the question in terms of, is it actually availability in terms of houses actually being available, like physically in existence, or many have come off the market? Because I know there's a conversation before, excuse me, in terms of the Airbnb, but Airbnb numbers do not compensate or do not fully compensate for the fact of how many people left. There are not as many Airbnbs on the market, right? To make it say, okay, fine, all those that left, their accommodations are now being converted to Airbnb.
Well, I think when the Chamber of Commerce first made that kind of point that, in spite of those who had left, there's still more housing needs. And I kind of ran the numbers through some AI agent, and they were actually correct that you could have more people leaving the island and still have this tremendous housing need. It could be some of those who were already staying in somebody else's house, so a family home, and decided that they'll take their 3 children and go. They're staying in with their mom or their dad or whatever, and they'll take their 3 children. So they haven't released the housing stock, but more people have gone. And so if you put the numbers in, that was definitely possible that you can have the scenario that we have now.
Okay, fair enough. All right. To listen, audience, again, you can now call in if you choose. The number to dial, is 297-1027. There have been some comments coming on social media, which I've tried to incorporate them in our discussion in terms of the budget 26-27 with Mr. Cordell Riley, who's our social commentator. And he made the point, as others have, by the way, in terms of the corporate income tax is of a significant impact for this year's budget. However, the government, through the voice of the Premier, primarily Minister of Finance, has said that the government budget has been balanced without corporate income tax, and the information is there. And so it's not as if it's just saying it; it's truth. And so to that we commend. Very last comment before I move on to the pension information is, what would your response be in terms of the current Minister of Finance has basically his legacy is going to be positively impacted by the corporate income tax, even though he didn't personally introduce it. Like history one, he happens to be the minister at a time when Bermuda's budget is going to exceed $2 billion for the first time. With all this, as you said, you started with being awash with cash.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the history book is going to record what it's going to record, and that's basically, that what you just said. The first time we crossed $2 billion, et cetera, et cetera. Who was the finance minister there? That's what the history books are going to look like.
Okay.
The corporate income tax is going to be there. It's going to be underlying. But if you go, say, 10 years from now and Bermuda continues to prosper,
Yes.
You're going to say, well, where did this all start? And you're going to say, well, it's under this minister. And that reminds me, because it's something I was thinking about as I was driving here.
Sure.
And you asked me about polling a few minutes ago. And when I used to do the polls before, I used to have the question, which party would you trust to manage the economy? Which party do you believe is more in tune with the people, with the needs of the people? Well, back in the old UBP days, they always won in terms of those who trusted them for the economy, and the PLP always won in terms of people felt that they were concerned more about the people's needs.
Yeah.
But over years, the PLP started to match them,
then
overtake them in terms of the management of the economy.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I saw that.
I mean, from a polling point of view.
From a polling point of view. But now if you ask the people, and I haven't done one recently, you have more people say neither of them are concerned about my needs.
Oh. No, but it's interesting, though, because, I think that is the general narrative now in terms of that has been narrative that the UBP, OBA, whatever,
and OBA,
were the actual business people.
Yes,
and the PLP had a heart. And if you telling me now that it actually has not switched more so that in any shape or form, even if it's close to the fact of the PLP and the OBA having an equal, the people having an equal view of them in terms of leading the economy, that's quite incredible.
So people felt that they were managing the economy well.
Wow.
People talk about the debt. Both parties raised the debt.
Yes.
But now you see again, the legacy would be that Premier David Burt, as finance minister, is leading the charge to pay down the debt.
Yes.
So all of these things are going to be recorded in history.
That's quite interesting. Quite interesting. And he'll also be recorded as the Premier and Minister of Finance to record a balanced budget after so many years of deficit budgeting. So again, well done.
Yeah. So that is how it's going to be historically. That's how it's going to be read, right? And so for to be an opposition member right now to try to critique the budget, it's going to be very, very difficult because it's awash with cash.
Gotcha.
And so the thing is, how are you going to spend that cash?
Yes.
And from the people's perspective, how are you going to lighten my burden? That's what the people want to know.
Gotcha. Well, again, and I did ask him, by the way, just so the listening audience knows, to be able to come back and have another interview on his legacy. When he came 2 weeks ago, he had he was being a bit current or not evasive, but he didn't want to talk about too much. But it is something we should talk about, in my mind, to just to let him say what he wants to say. Obviously, there's life after being a premier. He's been a premier for so long. He's got a young family, and so we expect him to do things differently, and we will see what it says. So now let's switch off, if you will, to a very relevant topic, which is the recent reform of the public service pensions. I'll call it that way as a summary. It impacts lots of people. And I said I was surprised. Somebody said they think that it made that. I think that they said that under the circumstance, it would not be necessarily a big surprise if that many people resigned in preparation for this new act. And so I'm not going to ask you directly about that, but let's now have a general conversation in terms of what it is and what it isn't. I'll start by saying that what is happening, or what has happened, is the government recognized there's a big deficit in the pension scheme or the pension plan assets. In order to try to, in my words, stop the bleed, they've made some changes to make it more sustainable.
Yes.
And so you can give some comments if you want, and I'll go back and talk about the history and this type of things, and let's have a conversation. And if anybody wants to call in, of course, the number to dial is 297-1027. And ultimately, what I want to get from you, from your background again, is what is your... Well, more than your opinion, what would you say is a factual observation about what might be the unintended consequences of this pension pension reform, which is actually stabilization?
Okay, I want to take you back to 2014. And
Okay.
in 2014, I did a forum at the Bermuda College titled "Facing the Brutal Facts."
Oh, wow, okay.
And it was about this very topic. So we're talking about more than a decade ago. It wasn't well attended, but it got a lot of publicity the next day in the press. And I talked about the fact that the aging population is going to mean that there's going to be less people paying into the government tax pool, and therefore we're going to have some challenges on the horizon. Now, this was before the youth population or the elderly population overtook the youth population. That was predicted I think at the time, maybe in maybe 2027. But when the new population forecast came out, it was clear now that that was going to take place in 2017.
10 years earlier.
And so I'm going around and saying, so as it got closer to, because I did speak on it several times, when it got closer to 2017, I had stated, what major event is going to take place in July of 2017, right? And everybody, I think the forum was in 2017. I did another one in 2014, but that one I think was in 2017.
Okay.
Right? And I said, what major event is going to take place in July of 2017? And everybody would say, America's Cup, America's Cup. I said, you see, you're hoodwinked. You're not watching the data.
Right.
The data is showing that in 2017 in Bermuda, the elderly population will, for the very first time, overtake the youth population.
Okay.
And in 2017,
Wow.
and from there on then, we're going to have challenges because there's less people paying into tax. They're getting more elderly, larger consumers of health care, a number of things, school closure. All of this was put into this forum.
Wow.
Right, which was not well attended. But like I said, it got a lot of publicity.
Okay.
Right? And so that was in 2017. And I said, already it was too late if you didn't have a plan. But we needed to get on the plan as soon as possible in order to combat some of these challenges that are going to take place.
Okay.
And that was the first time it was publicly announced that the youth population is now much lower than the elderly population.
So do you recall what approximately that was? Elderly versus youth?
What was the population there?
Roughly, yeah. Just you're seeing that.
Okay, so if you're talking, the elderly, you're talking about 65 and over,
Yeah.
and the youth, you're talking about 18 or less. And I don't know how many were there. Let's say there are 20,000 youth in the youth population, but now you got 21,000 in the elderly population.
Okay.
Right. So I don't know what the figures are. I can go back and get them.
Sure.
But that was the reality of it that was taking place in that year, right, in 2017, that this was going to take place. And it wasn't talked about until I made this announcement that, I looked at government's own population figures,
Okay.
and I'm like, wait a minute. And then to check myself, Canada had surpassed it the year before. I said, okay, see, it's happening in the Western world. All of us are going through the same thing.
Okay.
But we was the plan. I know the National Office of Seniors were doing some work because they had hired me, I think around 2011 or 2012, and I sort of did a shell of a plan.
Wow.
Right? But here we are in 2017. That was when it was in 2027, around that time. Right? And now I'm looking at the data in 2011, at 12 or whatever it was. And now I'm looking at the data in 2017, and that was a monumental shift.
Yes. Okay.
Right? So we are aging much rapidly. So we don't have, as you well know, we don't have immigration, we don't have migration data. And so we only find that out at the census, which is, I think, taking place this year, right? So we'll find out what the census. So we'll see now who's left, how many people. Well, we won't see. We'll just know the numbers have gone, right? And so we'll see an ever increasing aging population, and we'll see an ever shrinking youth population. And so you asked me earlier what to do. Well, I know some of the European countries like France, they're actually paying their citizens to have children.
Well,
and I kind of sneakily said, well, I'll volunteer to help, to help get it off the ground.
that's amazing. Okay. Wow. I'm sure Liz would. Well,
I was just going to say that. I was going to say so. No, but I'm just joking.
Her name is not named. She's not Sarah, that's for sure. So not even close. And just real quick too, in terms of this unexpected surge, right? Yeah. Was it because young people left, or what? Obviously,
surge?
The elderly overtaking the younger persons sooner, because if there was projection, right, it meant that somebody would say, okay, fine, the person that's dying at whatever the rate's going to be versus birth, and there will be the lines will intersect at a point in time. But you said it happened sooner. So what happened? Like, what caused that?
Okay, so that's an interesting question, because in my role as the institutional research analyst at the Bermuda College, there's something that was in our data that puzzled me for a number of years. Okay. And that is that we had a major drop in enrollment from 2015 to 2016, we lost a third of our student body.
Well,
And
in
I'm
that 1 year.
In 1 year.
Wow.
And like, first thing, did we retain them? What happened? And I could not figure out what was the cause of that. And we normally have things in place, like we will go around calling students and stuff like that. And I think we weren't able to reach some of the students. But it puzzled me that we lost a third of
That's a lot.
our population. And then it wasn't about maybe last year or the year before last. I'm going through the annual digest of statistics, and I'm looking at the population. And I notice a graph that looked very much like the graph I prepared for the college. That in 2014 to 15, there's a huge drop.
Yes.
The same thing happened in our population. And so I was excited at that point because now I know that it was nothing that we did or didn't do to retain those 300 students, that they apparently left the island in 2015 because we had about 2,000 people. The population declined by almost 2,000 people.
Right.
That's a huge drop because how many people did we lose due to the pandemic? A couple of hundred?
You mean that? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We lost a couple of hundred in terms
Yes.
of deaths, right? But we lost nearly 2,000 in 1 year due to people leaving. So I was excited. I took to the board of the college and I said, this has been puzzling me for the past several years. And now I'm able to find out that the population declined by more than 2,000. And with that went 300 of
Gotcha.
our students.
Wow.
I said, but I don't know why. But at least I know what happened. And then a board member says to me, oh, I can tell you why. Back in 2015, we had something with regards to our passports. They were no longer being printed in Bermuda. And there was a rush on the passports. It was two things. I can't remember the second one. But two things caused Bermudians to rush to get their passports in 2015. And having got those passports, they must have said, you know what?
No, I'm going to use it.
I
Wow.
might as well. And
Okay.
that's what happened. They left the island.
Okay.
And so that answered part of the rush. But we've always had those passports. We can get up and go at any time, which is why I always advocated for some sort of migration controls at the airport. We need to fill out something.
Controls or just you mean data gathering?
Data gather,
Okay,
yes,
fine.
yes, no control.
Okay.
Data, we just want to gather the data, right?
sure, yeah.
Because right now, I mean, if I want to go to Canada, I got to fill out a NASTA. If I want to go to the States, I got to fill out if I'm using my Bermuda passport,
Yeah.
I don't. But
Okay.
we should have something at the airport where before you travel, you have to fill it out online.
Right.
And the people say, well, what about Granny? She doesn't have a computer. Well, Granny needs to go to Canada. Who does ASTA
Somebody-
for?
yes, yes.
Somebody does it for. So you have to have some sort of data gathering so that you know what's happening in between
Oh, okay.
the census use. Because otherwise you're operating in a vacuum and you just don't know what's happening. And then you get these shocks. So it took me a few years to discover what happened. And then by spreading that, find out why it happened. So now we know that at any one time, a Bermudian could just up and leave, and we won't get information on that until the next census, or we
Right.
won't get information. We'll just say, oh my goodness, there's another drop in population.
Okay.
Right? So now we know what some of the triggers are, right? So that's why I'm an advocate for having some sort of data gathering for when people travel. Are they going overseas for a trip? Are they going to school? Because that was information that we used to gather
Yes, I
before.
remember. Yes, yes,
And
yes.
I understand because I was in tourism
Right.
at the time. They were going through this, and our immigration, our travel card was more like data gathering.
Yes.
And we capture so much data, but that data was vital.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
it.
with the loss of that, so when people go away for school, we can find out when they're likely to come back,
yeah.
right? And what jobs are available for them, and we can follow up with them, because they've given us information. And if we can track them down, maybe you can track the parent down and find
Yes,
out.
yes, yeah.
So we had the means, but with that information gone, this is where we are.
Well, okay. And so that in your mind, those inform the whole pension discussion? The reforms?
Well, right, because now we know, right, that more and more young people, the ones the people who are in the child producing years
Yes.
are the ones going. So the rest of us are not going to be producing too many children
Right.
as much as we try, right?
Okay.
But the ones who are in a position to produce those children, they're going and they're taking the young ones with them. And so that's going to impact them, and they're not coming back.
And so that's interesting. So the comments you're making now, they would, I guess, underscore, even validate the comment that people are leaving, like a lot of people are leaving Bermuda. Because sometimes we say it's anecdotal, right, without any evidence, but you're suggesting that, yes, there is evidence
Well,
as to the actual
we have
leaving.
evidence in 2015 that 2,000 people left the island because our population dropped by nearly 2,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we have that evidence for that year.
Yes.
Right? If we were able to track that every year, we would know definitively. But we don't. So we learn after the fact. So since we know that that's a possible, this existing.
Yes.
Right? Because for us, I would have noticed a trend without having to grapple with 300 lost students.
Correct. Okay.
Why did we lose those? That's huge for Bermuda College.
It's used
right?
anywhere. Yes. Yes.
Right? Why did we lose? It's like, because we think equally, what did we do wrong?
Yes, yes.
We should have retained those students, right? It's nothing that we could have done. The parents took them.
Wow. Okay. So now let's come more particularly in terms of the current pension legislation.
Yes.
What's changed? And I mean, do you offer a comment in terms of the potential for persons to? Well, let's go back a minute in terms of what has changed to even cause people to think about possibly leaving or retiring from the public service.
Well, okay. So that number 1,000 was based on those who are eligible.
So you think based upon your background, this number might not be unreasonable.
No, definitely not unreasonable.
Oh, well.
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay, let's talk about that then.
Because,
And just sorry before you go there. So you're suggesting then that the data, I guess data might suggest that 1,000 public offices, which is going to be all of the civil servants plus the BIU, what I call the BIU workers, those come under the BIU collective bargaining agreement, plus it will be Bermuda College, fire, and all uniform services.
Yes.
That's the totality of the public offices that I'm referring to, including the magistrates and the rest of it. And so it's all those people that are currently enrolled in the pension plan.
I don't even think it includes all of that. It includes probably the civil service.
Yes.
The Quengo is probably not included in that.
Well, some, right, because what happened is before I remember that the Krengers were able to write to get permission to be part of the superannuation scheme. So maybe, but I mean, that's not a major portion. But
so that's
interesting.
So
wow.
the 1,000
teachers, everybody.
So the 1,000 people is not unreasonable who are eligible. And so when my colleague Dr. Anand was interviewed for the Roy Gazette,
yes,
he said, "Well, there's a quick check we could do. Just ask the pension office." The number of applications they receive in terms of wanting to know what their pension payable is should they leave at the end of the year.
And at least that'd be anecdotal in terms
that
of a surge in requests.
A surge in requests,
okay.
Right?
Yes.
So, and we know that's happened, right? We know that's happened. There's been a surge of people requesting information about their pension. And then you have things like... lost my train of thought now.
But I mean, it's interesting, like I said, in terms of it's anecdotal, I guess, but the government itself would know, has there been an increase in
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But then I've been told by people who have already submitted theirs, right, if you're going to go, do it now because there's going to be a backlog. And they said they're already backlogged.
Okay.
This is from persons who've already tendered their resignation.
Yes.
And said, this is what I've discovered. You better go now if you're thinking about going.
And again, that's interesting in terms of like what is driving it, because I'm asking because the pension adjustment is basically going to be that, okay, you can still retire whenever you choose to go, but it's going to be a change in, number one, the effective date of what you receive as a pension, and also going forward, it's going to be a different way to calculate what's going to be the base of calculation to go from your last salary to your last, ultimately going to be your last 10-year salary, which is going to be less by definition.
And that's the big driver right there, because after March 31st, 2027, the process is going to be changed based on what you get as a lump sum. So right now, it's based on your years of service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the government it's unsure what the new calculation is going to be. That creates uncertainty. Because if you're there sitting, if you're over 60 and they're saying it's going to change, and you're seeing some of the other changes already, you're going to wonder, okay, this cannot be in my favor. So therefore, if it's not likely to be in my favor, maybe I ought to go now when I am able to know what it is that I'm going to get. So the first step is to request from the pension office, if I were to leave at the end of say December or the end of March of 2027, what will I get? And as you know, they give you these options. You have a lump sum of X number of dollars, right? And I think given the length of service for those who might believe, that sum is going to exceed $100,000.
Correct, at
right?
25%, yes.
Yeah, that's going to exceed $100,000 per person. Then, it could be, if you want a lower amount, you can get a higher pension,
yes,
right? Or if you want a higher amount, you get a lower pension. They give you 6 options,
yes,
right? It's very clear. It's very transparent. I know what I'm going to get, right? So the first step people have been doing is requesting that statement.
Okay.
And so then after that, they're going to say, okay, if the calculation is going to change, and the government is giving out more and more information, because when Dr. N and I met with the team, there's certain things that we didn't know, and then they filled us in. So saying the average over 10 years, for instance, it's going to be grandfathered in. So it's going to be, I think, 2 years, and it's moved.
Yes, every 2 years.
Right? So it's going to, but that wasn't known at the time. So a lot of this information is coming out now.
Okay.
But, so, and the big thing was that people, you asked for the trigger, people thought the lump sum was going away with altogether.
And it's not.
Right. So that was the big trigger. So now we know that it's not going away altogether.
Yes.
We know it's going to be recalculated. But that also creates alarm bells.
Okay.
Right? Because you're thinking, if it's going to be recalculated, what's the likelihood that it's going to increase my payout?
It's going to be less.
It's going to be less.
Yes.
So why would you know, if you know now that it's going to be less after March 31st, 2027, why would you want to wait till after that?
Okay, that's good because, and for me rather, obviously, I've had many people ask me about it, but what you're giving now is greater clarity. And to the listening audience, what Kadal is talking about, Mr. Wright is talking about, is how, for those that are in the public sector, if you retire, is to understand what the impact is going to be on your retirement. And so the clarity, the public clarity is going to be that you can still get your lump sum, but what they're going to do is what they call an actuarial estimate and a slight adjustment to it, reduction to it, as you say, because in the past, you might get, say, I don't know, a 25% lump sum, and the balance of 75% might last you for, let's say, 10 years. Whereas now, based upon life expectancy and all the rest of it, they want to make an adjustment to ensure that the money is enough to last you during your retirement years. And so going to do an actuarial reduction. That's all, not all, but that's what's going to be. So I'm happy that I have a better understanding now as to what it is, because the government should be able to give information a lot faster. And I'm surprised, to be honest, in terms of the back book, because it's a mechanical calculation. You know what your service is, you know what, it should be something automatic.
But if you got I don't know how much you normally do, in a week.
Yeah.
But then if that quadruples, it becomes, and you got other things to do so it's created that. But I mean, so people have requested their statements and look at it. So yes, that number of 1,000, maybe those who are eligible.
Yes.
We don't know as yet how many are going to take that up. And so now when people think about it, they're going to say, well, because I've heard some people say to me, well, you know what, I'm not going anywhere right now. I just want to work.
Exactly.
And if their financial status is such that, I still need to work, they will continue on.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Like you said, it doesn't take away their right to go to early retirement. The lump sum is not going; it may reduce.
Yes.
And if you're fairly well off, it's not going to bother you, right?
Yes.
But if you're not fairly well, that sum. So for instance, and a lot of people have put in a lot of years, so that sum is $100,000. That may be the first time they've had that much money in the bank, right? And so why would they not take that, right? And try to budget. Of course, the critical thing is now you got a budget on that $100,000. You're getting a pension of maybe $1,500. Let's say that you got your $100,000, you got your pension of $1,500. You might get one at 65 again. You might have $2,000 or so coming in. Is that enough to maintain? If you earn your own home, it's not a big deal. If you're still paying rent or something, it's going to be a challenge for you.
Yes.
So you might decide, you know what, I'm going to continue working because I need that money.
Okay.
So so that's where the $1,000 number came from.
Yes.
Who takes it up? That's a different story, but we're going to find out within a year how
Okay.
many people have taken that up.
And what's I guess an encouragement to me at least is to find out some more details now, because so as you say, if you estimate that under normal circumstances, quote unquote, your lump sum might be 100,000, on the new scheme it might go down to, let's say, I don't know, say 95,000, and that might not be
A big
as
difference?
exactly to have that impact. And
Yeah.
so now it's going to be interesting to find out, can government give some indication as to what's going to be as what I call the actuarial reduction?
Yeah,
and then we would know.
I think that
Is
would
it 10% or whatever? Yeah.
And so once people know, then
Okay.
another unknown is
Yes.
now known, and it's you can breathe a sigh of relief, or you have more concrete information with which to make a decision.
Yes.
It may mean that they definitely will go, or it means they may hold back
Yes.
a little bit more. So I think that's the kind of thing that people are looking at. But the other side of the coin, right? There are two things you can look at. One, if that 1,000, let's say 1,000 go, and that's 100,000 per person.
Yes.
That's $100 million.
Yes. Oh, yes.
That is huge,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So government obviously going to recoup that over the years,
Sure.
but that's a huge payment that's going to be made on the front end.
Yes.
Right? The second thing is, well, there's three things. The second thing is that, I'd say if I decide to go at my tender age,
Yes.
right? I'm still, if I have my health, I'm still useful.
Yes.
What's the likelihood that I can get another job?
Very high.
It's going to be higher because we need Bermudians in the workforce.
Yes.
We need Bermudians with skills, right? And so the likelihood is that we'll be able to get a job and be on our terms.
Yes, understood. Okay.
So my situation may even become better
It will
than when
be.
I was working,
yes.
right? So that's the option. And then, of course, again, can you afford to let even 5% of your workforce go and having to replace 5% of your most senior people?
I'm saying the answer is no. That's what
The
I'm
answer
saying.
is
So
no.
that it's going to be interesting. And I think, well, you did say already that you are currently employed at community college. And so, heaven forbid, Dr. Sams, if 5% of the college faculty leave, that's a problem.
And support staff.
Well,
And if they're faculty are difficult
the entire-
to get anyway,
Yes.
right? But let's focus on the fact faculty are difficult to get anyway, right?
Okay.
So most of our faculty come from overseas now. And we have to replace
That's interesting. So the
Craig
same
Simmons.
impact. Okay.
Who do we replace a Craig Simmons with?
Got you.
My good friend,
Yeah.
Dr. Anand, right?
Yes.
But if we can hire Bermudian,
Wow. Hold on, caller.
Dr. Anand was obviously highly qualified.
Yeah.
But if we had a Bermudian like that, we would certainly take a Bermudian. But
Okay.
the likelihood is that's not going to happen.
Well, again, this is now very refreshing. It's almost, I guess, it's to my problem. I guess I should have another show about this generally, and maybe I will find some more people. Maybe you come back again and have a show that's entirely on the public pension reform.
Well, that would be Dr.
details.
Anand, because that's
Gotcha.
his area of expertise.
Gotcha. Okay, fair enough. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Insight. What's your question or comment?
Yes. Good evening, gentlemen. Good
evening.
How you doing?
Good,
Fine,
thanks.
Great. Just one quick question, my good friend.
Sure.
What would be your opinion when I'm going straight into hospitality now?
Yes.
When the hospitality management is not hiring qualified Bermudians?
Okay. So,
Sorry. Is that your only question, caller?
That's the only one, straight to the point.
yeah.
Okay. So I'll let him answer. You can take off air. So thank you.
Sure. Thanks, buddy.
Call back if you need to, but thanks.
Sure.
Okay. So that should never happen. And I think there should be safeguards in whatever deal they make with these hotels that if a Bermudian is available, that they get the job. If you see what love him or not, Donald Trump is doing in the States in terms of the HB1 visa, where it's affecting India mostly. And a lot of Americans are claiming that once the Indians became managers, they just simply hired other Indians through the H1B visa. And so that's why Donald Trump has decided, first of all, you had to pay $100,000 for that visa. And that, that put people, put it out of reach, because if you're using it just to get rid of your Americans, well, that loophole has been plugged. And, so we are in a position of where we can learn from that experience so that any qualified Bermudian, and I think this is something that Minister Haywood is looking at, because I can tell you years ago when I went to an immigration forum, and, we had this ideal about how immigration works.
Yes.
And I was in the human resource consulting industry at that point, and I thought that when, in order to get a work permit, you had to submit the number of applicants per meeting, you had to submit the resumes, and you had to do all of that. And the chief immigration officer decided, no, they don't. They just tell you, we had no Bermudians. I said, well, how would you know that a Bermudian apply if you don't require them to submit this information? They can just tell you, well, we put it out, we didn't get any Bermudians, and then you grant the work permit, and then you get some disgruntled Bermudians saying, I applied for the job, which happened, and they didn't get it because they didn't get an interview. And so if you, the way you stop that is you require them to demonstrate that they had Bermudian applicants and why they weren't qualified.
Yes.
You don't want to be the subject matter specialist,
right?
But they have to demonstrate it, and so that you won't have these cases where qualified Bermudians were denied because that person wanted to bring somebody from their country.
Gotcha.
You want to stop that.
And that'll be interesting too. In terms, obviously, there's a mechanism by which Bermudians can appeal, quote unquote, that situation, circumstance.
But the information is not in real time.
I know. I was going to say the challenge for us is that nobody wants to be a complainer, quote unquote, or be blacklisted, so therefore we don't do it. But there is a process in place
but it's
for
not
that.
in real time. I mean,
Gotcha.
if I felt that somebody got a job, I would certainly go through whoever needs to know and make it very clear. But if I don't have the information in real time, then you can probably raise it, and if they accept it, it won't be until that work permit is up for renewal. But we don't know even when the work permit is up for renewal, right? We just see a job ad. So there's got to be more information out to Bermudians, so we can police this, because the immigration department and the Ministry of Labor would say, well, we didn't have enough people. But if you become more transparent, if I see that, wait a minute, or you have to put in the paper that this job is up for work renewal or something like that, then I can look at it and say, okay, do I have the skill sets? There's still challenges because you can always, the person that you want, you can always build up the skills, and the person that you don't want, you can always play down, and that happens, right? But still, you get a starting point where people can at least say challenge it, right? And the more people challenge it, people would think carefully about trying to do something, because if you want to go to the extreme of Donald Trump and say, okay, right, this is what we're going to do. That job, you want a visa for that, it's $100,000. I'm like, whoa, that's too much money. Well, the Googles and the others can pay it, but it's going to impact the little small businessman, because now, but if you are the very ones who are abusing the system, maybe you had to take the cut, right? So there you go.
Wow. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Insight. What's your question or comment?
Yes, good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Just into how we're looking at to protect Bermudians who may put in applications, never get an interview, blah, blah, right? What could happen, all employers who is looking to hire someone, because we do have a government employment agency, right? That's right?
I don't think we have that anymore.
Workforce development, but not an employment agency, no.
Okay, well, we used to have one,
Yes,
right?
we did, years ago.
Well, I'm just saying in the sense that, okay, if you're going to, in need of hiring someone, you as the employer should also submit to the government employment agency.
I think that's a requirement, that you submit the job there as well, yes.
Yeah, is it a requirement or is it not? Because you're sounding like you're not sure.
I'm not 100%. I believe I talking with the officials at the Workforce Development, I think that is a requirement, but I would definitely have to confirm that. But I think I had a conversation with them.
Right. If there's a requirement now, the employee should also submit to that agency as well.
That is
you
correct.
know.
Yes, that is correct. They do. They are required. Well, they're recommended that they submit it so that they can. Do the match. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. I see where you're going. Yes.
Yes, you see where I'm going.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying in that sense that the government would have that record on hand directly, other than just going to the company and applying and then finding out that you're not even being called in for an interview
Correct.
or blah, blah, or you've got the qualifications and not been hired due to the fact that there's some loophole somewhere, like they find them to shove you in, and then, you know, you don't get the opportunity. So I'm saying that could be a way of helping Bermudians to be able to be protected from, you know, applying and not even been looked at.
Gotcha.
So
That's an excellent suggestion, Caller. Thank you.
you know, I think that will be a help, and government would have data on that, and then when they find out that Bermudian, if they'll put in Bermudians first, which was in the platform, and they have heard word from that department that they are looking to make sure that Bermudians do have the opportunity, especially in the hotel industry, that's coming up. So, you know, I think that would be a way of helping us out, and I'll listen over it.
Thank you, Caller.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and that's an easy one to do. It's not going to be too costly because the mechanisms are already in place. And I'm just thinking, I know the employers have to advertise. I think one of the places that they can place it is at the workforce development, or they can still advertise through their normal channels. So it may not be a requirement, but it's an option for them to have it at the workforce development. But if it was a requirement, then you're right. This matching could take place. So you got these persons in this field. You can do a check with AI now. That's very easy to do. This person is a 90% match. This person is a 95%.
Oh, wow.
The
Okay.
government could be very, very efficient, saying, "Wait a minute," and you don't have to even be an HR expert. You can, you know, have somebody set it up for you, and they could do the matching, and then you can have the ammunition to go back and say, "Well, wait a minute. I saw the application from so and so, but according to our records,
Yes.
this person is as good or better than the person you're suggesting that should have the job." So that gives the government more power in order to do that. And so that will prevent it from, or reduce it from happening. I won't say prevent it, but it will reduce it. And like you said, if the mechanisms are already in place, all you have to do is take it a step further and make that a requirement that there's vacancies placed.
Okay, good.
Within, I don't know, within, how long does it take? Maybe 3 months or, within 6 months of a work permit going up for renewal, you have to replace it within.
Okay, that's
and then you've got, you can see with Bermudians out there, and you can safeguard. And that gives you more leverage. And when you hear Bermudians say, "Well, I applied and I had this," and that, you might be able to see, well, they didn't have exactly what they're looking for,
it's a good match.
but they have the opportunity to at least challenge. Right now, you can only challenge after the fact.
Gotcha, it's too late.
And that's if you find out.
Gotcha. Another question came in real quick is, do you have any idea which countries people are emigrating to? Any signs of
Well, we know
most of them are going to the UK, or
most of them go. Well, a lot of them going to the UK because it's easy to set. You go there, you've got your British passport, you get your insurance number, and you're good to go for working. Right? It's a smooth transition going to the UK. Some people have ties to the United States. Some people have ties to Canada. It may be easier for them to go. A lot of these countries who are going through the same thing are going to poach the highly skilled. So, say for instance, Canada, if you have skills in certain areas, you have an easy entryway in. Even United States. But then you look at places like New Zealand and some parts of Europe, like they have some communities that are so desolate, they're paying you to come.
Well, okay, fair enough.
But it's not maybe places you want to go because their populations are just decimating those communities, and they're bringing in people to build up this population.
Gotcha.
So they're basically paying you, but maybe it's not the area that you want to go. But so because this is not only something unique to Bermuda, you're going to find that people have options.
Yes. Okay.
And they're taking advantage of those options.
You can't fault them for that. So, okay, wonderful. Good evening, caller. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to Inside on Magic 102.7 on your Sunday evening.
Good evening, Cordell.
Good evening.
You was absolutely right. Correct on your President Trump changing the goalposts for HB1 visas. He did change them $500,000 per visa per person.
That's
Wow.
right.
And he also changed it from,
And I think it's per year.
that's correct. And he also changed it from a bachelor's degree. You have to have a master's
Okay.
or doctorate now.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
high. Okay.
Yeah, it's changed the whole
Ball
ball
game,
game
yeah.
all the way around.
Okay.
So my question is, do we have a price for, if we do an HB1 visa for Bermuda, what is the price for that, or what is the price for a work permit?
Oh, you comment. That's not in place for Bermuda. Bermuda will have to decide. It's a trade-off in terms of we need people. How do you balance all of that need without making the price too high? Because you don't want to cause a problem whereby you can't get people here to work.
Well, that's correct. But
Yes.
what about the people that? What about your people that's looking for work and not given the opportunity because someone has been brought in on a work permit?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think someone mentioned some time ago that your work permit fee should be tied to how much you get paid.
To salary. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
So the higher the salary up, the higher the work permit is, the lower the salary, and you can have a ceiling, So I don't know what the work permits cost now, but the ceiling could be what the standard price is, and then the rates go higher. They may have had some opposition as to why that's not been implemented, but it's that kind of thinking that how do you level the playing field so that Bermudians don't feel like they're, according to Dr. Eva Hudson, the late and great Dr. Eva Hudson, they're not second-class citizens in their own country.
In their own country, which is correct, because when I have an immigration minister saying only 18 Bermudians got jobs and 500 plus work permits was given out, they all weren't given out for IB.
Yes, understood.
Yeah.
You
So
see what I'm saying?
yeah, so we do have to have another look at this. Again, the one of the questions I was asked was, how do we make sure that everybody who is Bermudian who has the skills to be employed are employed? What can we prevent them from people looking over them? And we all have stories about Bermudians being looked over, and they're legitimate. But what can we do to prevent that? So again, my whole premise on this is that we have to retain those young Bermudians if we want our country to continue to survive with Bermudians in it. If we want to look at Cayman Islands, they're having second thoughts about what they did in terms of their immigration policies, and now they're complaining about they're almost feeling like they don't belong. A lot of other countries are feeling like in the Caribbean are feeling the same way because of the high cost of living. If you go to Trinidad, you go to Jamaica, you go to Barbados, you go to Bahamas, the people are talking about the high cost of living.
Yes.
So the same sort of challenges that they're having, so we want to be able to look at our people and retain our people and see what we can put in place to make sure that those who really want to stay here, because a lot of us who go don't really want to go, so if we can make it such that they want to stay and they can stay, maybe we're able to save some of them. We might not be able to save them all, but we might be able to save a good portion of those, and then we can make it easier for them to live in Bermuda and perhaps start to turn the declining population around.
But it's interesting, though, even not.
Right.
But,
Okay, guys, I'm going to listen off here.
Thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate that.
Okay, man.
Sorry. So it's interesting, though, in terms of the person I called earlier about being, being qualified and not employed. In the hospitality sector, given what's going to happen at Fairmont Southampton, it's going to be interesting to see if Bermudians don't get employed, because, people may say no, but it is easier to hire a Bermudian because they're already here, all that kind of thing, right? And should be less expensive. And so if the hotel projects that much of a demand, hopefully there's a mechanism in place whereby we can do this now and say, listen, these are the Bermudians that are applying. Somebody give a good vetting of that to make sure that all those persons that are qualified do in fact get employed. Because as you said also, Fairmont Hampton starts, they're going to actually obviously take people from other hotels And so the other hotels have to backfill.
Yeah.
And hopefully there's enough of a dynamic whereby everybody that's willing and able and qualified to do so will be able to get jobs and go from there.
Well, they did start to create this kind of database because they had a job fair about 2 years ago.
Yes.
And I went to it. I think it was here.
Okay.
And I just put my name in there to see what would the process be, right?
Okay.
Now, no one's contacted me, but they put jobs out there. And there was a job that came up that I really took a hard look at. It was Director of Revenue Services. And I thought, oh, man, I could probably do that with ease,
Yes.
be my statistical background and all of that. And then I thought, do I really want to leave one full-time job
Right.
to go to another full-time job at this stage of my life? Well, some people would jump at it and say,
Yes.
absolutely, it's a new change, it's this and the other. Obviously, I didn't go any further, but I did look at it. And so they have these jobs. So, but like I said, no one's actually called me and said we have a match or so I don't think they're doing that piece, but they do have a database.
Okay, we will see. Good evening, caller. Thank you for your patience. What's your question or comment?
Just calling back. Didn't we have a training program attached to the bringing in of people?
Yes.
I would say even in the high-end area where at one point, if you came here for a job or any job,
Yes.
you were supposed to be, if you were deemed to be better than the qualified Bermudian, you were supposed to be able to train that person, for the job in which that you're doing,
Yes.
I think that was part of that. But a real problem that we do have in bringing in expatriates is the quality of English that they could speak.
And again, that's a broad statement. That's some of them. That's not all of them for sure. But yeah.
Yes, and I know, but it's the truth. I'm telling you from some of the comments you get from the guests.
Yes.
When they're trying to make an order or ask for something, and the quality of the English language compared to people coming from farther, from different areas, the quality is not there, and it causes a whole lot of trouble.
Okay, caller. Let me take that point. The lights light up now. Let me take that point and go for it. Okay.
Thank you much.
Thank you. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Insight. What's your question or comment?
Yes. Good night, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
This may not be right directly on your topic,
Yes, sir.
but
Just ask the question. No worries.
I'm asking for your knowledge.
Yes.
Okay.
I know Canada and UK have national health plans.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Do they also have private health insurance companies in their countries?
Yes.
And do those private health companies have anything to do with working with the national health plan?
Well, you actually decide what you want to pay. You can always pay for private health care. It just obviously ends up being a lot more expensive. That's all.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yes, of course.
Okay. So
Yes.
that there might be what will work here in Bermuda, or might happen in Bermuda.
Yes. We will see.
If the national health plan does happen. That is.
Universal health care. Yes.
Okay, whatever it's called. Yeah,
Yes.
universal health plan. Okay. I wonder how many jobs will be lost.
Should be zero, but we'll see.
Oh, yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
well, we'll see. Okay. Anyway, there's was a little bit of what's been on my mind. More things, but I'm satisfied with that for now.
Thank you, caller.
Good night to you.
Good night.
Okay, bye-bye.
Righto.
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening, caller. What's your question or comment? Welcome to Insight.
Good evening,
Good
Mr.
evening.
Raleigh and Mr. Richardson.
Good evening.
My comment is, I see the government's going to pay a one-time fee of $10,000 for retired government employees.
It's a 10%. It's a 10% pension increase.
10%. Sorry, I say right. Correct.
Yes.
10%, yeah. So how is that worked? Or how is they reckon that if it's going to be 10% of what you've been getting?
Yes.
Because they stopped. I think the UBP was there. They stopped at 2012. We were getting the cost of living increase.
Yes.
So, and they picked it up at 2014. So explain to me how it's going to be worked out. You get this 10% on top of what you're getting now, or how's it worked out? Thank you. I'll listen off here. Thanks.
Sure.
Good program.
Thank you. That's my understanding. That if you get right now, I don't know, say a monthly pension of $1,500, that'll be an extra $150 you get onto that, and then that's what will continue on. And in future, what will happen is any further increases will be based upon an evaluation, and ultimately the minister will be able to decide and move forward with any increases. So yes. and you're right, it is to compensate for the fact that there have not been increases for a period of time. And so now the government wants to recognize that, and then going forward, there not be automatic increases, but they will look at it and decide based upon an actuarial valuation whether or not any increase should be given.
So everything going forward is being done on prudent actuarial.
Yes, which makes sense. As people say now, everything is going to start to be evidence-based, which it should have been all along, as opposed to parliamentarians decide and stuff. And so that's the way it'll work. Okay, so again, for the pension piece, I think you provided valuable insight, in my mind, at least in terms of the person's considerations. And hopefully, what will happen is, as we go forward, the government can provide a formula so you can go online and do it and not have so much backup. You may not be able to get an exact estimate, however, get a good ballpark, and then people can decide, okay, fine, my impact's going to be, between, I don't know, 1 and say 10,000 or something. And from that, you might be able to make a decision on how that will go. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Insight. What's your question or comment?
Yes. Good evening, Anthony. Good evening, Cutout.
Yes,
Quick
sir.
question. The CTI tax,
Yes.
did it increase the pension fund?
No. In terms of the government has not put money in the pension fund, that's what you mean from that?
Yes, from the CTI tax.
CIT, but no, the government has already stated that the corporate income tax is going to be used for specific things, and primarily it's going to be in relation to the debt reduction, and also it cannot be used for ongoing expenditures, like recurring expenditures. So there are some guidelines in terms of how it can be used and how it cannot be used.
Okay, so the pension fund falls under those guidelines?
No.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. That's going to be interesting, by the way, because the people knew that based upon insurance companies, they may make zero this year and $1 million next year. It varies quite a bit. But the government has already put in place a mechanism by which they're not going to spend all the money. They know it's going to be variable, and so they're going to take time to let the fund build up before they start doing things. But it has already been stipulated that the majority of the funds will be used to pay down debt, going forward. And so, I think that's an important thing. The lines are lighting up, so let's keep going there. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Insight. What's your question or comment?
Good evening again, Mr. Riley and Mr. Richardson.
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
I noticed that the corporate tax, CIT, what was the amount? 250 million?
Yes, about
Roughly.
253, yeah.
For that?
25,
Okay.
26.
Right.
Yeah, 750, I think, something like that for
Okay,
26,
fair enough.
27. Yeah.
I'm fully up paying down the debt, but I would also add, I'd like to see them put something on that airport out there, because that $300 million,
That they pay for the
that could have been raised locally. It wasn't done by this government, the other government, the OBA. That $300 million I figure could have been raised locally. So you spent $300 million to Canada to build that airport, or for secondhand steel.
Well,
And what's happening right now? You have secondhand steel.
right.
You had a problem out there, right, with that airport, and I think and it's going to cost you, I think, about $1 billion to pay off the Canadians.
Well, hold on. No, that's not true. Just to be clear, the government did not pay for the airport. The government allowed a company to build the airport at their own cost. The government did not pay anything for the airport in that sense.
Okay.
And then, okay.
Okay, Mr. Richardson, hang on. Haven't they still 50% of that airport?
Yes, to somebody else. 49%.
Right.
Yes.
So
How could
how much do we earn off that airport? Nothing.
that was the point. Could we have bought? In other words, could we have bought that 50%?
But
Actually-
you're getting to, I didn't know that. You're getting to my point, but it's done now.
Yeah. Well, I think that was your. Yeah.
Right.
That's what
I
you're
mean,
hinting at. Yeah.
I guess the question would have been, would government have had the money to do so? But
Yes.
I'm not aware that government got a chance to participate in that process, to
No.
be honest.
Okay, what I'm saying is maybe they could buy back 50% of that airport.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be
So
cost.
that's the revenue. That was the making almost was that make one of the biggest revenues, Mr. Richardson, when you was there? You called General, was that one
Was
of the
it 20
biggest?
million a
Yeah,
year?
it wasn't 100, maybe 20. I
20
think
I think
in my
it was about
mind
20
between
million a year.
between 14 and 20
Right.
million, let's say. Yes.
Right. So now somebody else owns that airport.
Correct.
And I don't know who the line up
No
too
problem.
much, but even your airspace, Britain controls our airspace, right?
Well, remember, Britain controls the Bermuda's ability to sign contracts
Yes.
as opposed to the airspace. The airspace actually was coming under former Minister Walter Rabin in terms of the what I call the space program, and that's still being investigated to ensure Bermuda can earn some funds from that.
Okay, all I was saying, I was under the impression that
Sure.
that they talked about at the airport that but the Secos, not Seco, the Canadians
Skyport.
at the airport.
Skyport.
Anyway, that it was going to cost $300 to build it, and it was going to cost us $1 billion to almost pay it back. That's what I understood in a public meeting, and I was very adamant about it. But nevertheless,
Okay.
so that airport's a revenue, and we didn't make nothing off it.
Well, again, I mean, we could have a conversation about that in terms of
Yeah.
the.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think didn't the government when
on, caller.
PLP returned to power, I think they did an extensive look at the contract to see if they were to buy it, and I think or to end the contract, the penalties involved, and at that time, obviously we didn't have the money, so
Right.
that's why the decision was made not to tackle that. Now, this money that we're talking about now is only recent, so I don't even know if that has been, that has been looked.
That's a good conversation.
Yeah.
Wow.
So to answer the caller's question, that was done at the very first juncture.
Yes.
But it was, the government just didn't have the money. First, it was a penalty for breaking the contract, right? And then it was, then you had to buy it. And so when you add up all of that, it was just prohibitive for the government. So now, I don't know if I can't remember. We can always look that up. But whether we have those funds now coming in. But then again, you just mentioned that there are very strict guidelines in terms of the CIT, in terms of how that money will be spent.
Correct.
So it may be, we have to live with it. It was for 35 years.
Yeah.
I don't know how old a year.
It ends in, I think it ends in 2045 maybe?
Yeah. So some of us may not be around when it ends, but anyway, so it may be we have to just go with the life of with the contract.
So that may be a conversation for another show. Good evening, caller. Thank you for your patience. What's your question or comment?
Okay. Hi, Anthony, and hi, Cordell.
Good
evening.
Good evening. Now, I don't know. See, I've had my radio turned down, so I don't know what the questions were all before.
That's
but
okay.
I'm going to ask this, and I don't even know whether it's should be a concern. But I was wondering, is there any way that we can attract, this is regarding Southampton Princess, we can attract those young people who are left the island and gone back over to the UK? Can we attract them in any way to come back home with different packages? I don't know. I'm just saying maybe that there could be, with the Hamilton Princess opening, to bring some of them back here who have the skills and could fit into those jobs, but give them a package that would be comparable to any other person coming in. I don't know.
Yes.
It seems like there's a way we should be able to bring some of our own people back home now that the government and the island is moving in this direction.
Yeah, that's possible.
Well, there's a couple of things there.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
hang on.
For me, there's a couple of things. One, we have to know who they are, right? We don't have a listing of those people who have left.
Right.
So that was what that information would have given us before. So we don't know, but that's not to say we can't track some of them down.
Yes.
All right? And so if we are able to track them down, do they want to come back?
Correct, yes.
A lot of them may want to come back, but then they're going to be faced with the same challenges, housing, this, cost of living. So she mentioned a package. So, that's why my process, I think at the beginning of the session, I stated that, I'd rather, let's focus on those who are here, prevent them from going first,
Yes.
right? Because you got them here, then to go out and try to bring those back, and for whatever reason, they may not want to come back, or the conditions are not right, all kinds of things like that.
Yes.
But, let's get a model first to keep them here, so that when we go out there to get them to come back, then there'll be reason for them to stay, because they would be able to have access to whatever model we've built here for those young people in terms of housing, et cetera, et cetera. But I understand the immediate concern. You've got a hotel coming up. It's saying that it's going to require 700 jobs. Can we bring in 100 Bermudians from overseas?
Yeah.
Right? That may be possible. And the government's got offices in London, probably
In the US.
contacts in the U.S.
Yeah.
You can start to put out this information that you're looking for. All the relatives who have people overseas, they might be able to send that information. You might be. What if you get 50 people who say,
even
yes,
one probably,
I'm ready to come
Yes.
back. I'm ready to take on that job. So it can be successful. In terms of at least the first step,
Yes.
and then we can start to build a model in terms of how do we get more back, But I think you still have to take care of the cost of living and housing being one of those, they must have to be able to say, yes, if you have this for me at this rent, I can do
That's
that,
interesting.
and I can do this, then I can take that job. You know, I just wear my hat from my previous position on the Wage Commission.
Yes,
right?
yes.
You know, you get a lot of anecdotal stories, right? And I got a call one evening from a chef.
Yes.
Right? This chef was earning at one of these major restaurants $10 an hour.
Oh, trust me, I understand that.
Right?
Yeah.
So $10 an hour, a chef, a Bermudian chef, right, getting $10 an hour. And he told me the only way he was able to afford or be able to work there, because that's what he loved to do, is because his wife worked in international business.
Support him, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And so, you know, this whole argument, because I had, you know, people saying that we shouldn't have a minimum wage and this, that, and the other. You know, as you know, being on the price control, you gotta
Yes.
balance so many things, right? And you're trying to be true to yourself, and you're trying to be true to your country. And so, you know, at the end of the day, in order to get something to move forward, you have to come to some sort of
Yes.
compromise, right?
Yes.
To get it over the line. And so we got it over the line. But, you know, that person was earning $10 an hour.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's
Absurd.
ridiculous. So if that was what happened before, you won't be able to attract Bermudians to come back. So that's why my emphasis is on, you've got to put things in place that make it possible
Yes.
for them to want to come back. Because then, so we know they won't get that. I think the minimum wage is 17 and change. I know the new chair of the Wage Commission, they're waiting for the census in order to be able to calculate the model. They're going to be using the same model that I would have used if I were the chair. They're going to go with that model, but the most recent data will be the census. So, you know, by next year, they will have some preliminary data, because it's, you know, it takes about a year and a half before you publish the data.
Okay.
But the government will have some preliminary data that they can work with until the census is fully analyzed. So that's the data that's going to be used to calculate the affordable wage.
Okay.
But in my mind, that is always going to be something that is aspirational. I don't think it's something the government's going to say, okay,
Because it's going to be quite hard.
yeah, right? But in the UK and other countries, when I was on the global living wage committee, the government wage commission was the equivalent of the private sector, a non-governmental organization, and they were encouraging companies to take this on board.
Yeah,
and so this is what you want to do here. So once you have these things in place, I think that gives people a certain comfort level that they may be, okay, I can come back.
Okay.
But until then, you know, especially with the wide opportunities is available.
And what they're doing now, remember, they got children, for example, that are in school, and so it's a huge conversation, but certainly there's something that should be attempted to be done.
But some are still coming back anyway, right? So we still need to be working towards having this sort of model in place, so that makes it very attractive for one, for people to stay, and two, for people to come back.
Wow. But again, Cordell, guess what? It's
God.
beyond the time.
You're lucky I didn't look at my watch. I would.
I know Miss Liz is there. She's saying, hey, where's Cordell?
Yeah, that's right.
But again, you know, definitely a very interesting conversation. We only hit the tip of the iceberg, as they say, in terms of the budget, and especially in terms of your pension information there. I'll look to do some more information around that, and hopefully, I guess in the next maybe 2 months, have a show about that, because it's interesting in terms of what we call the unintended consequences. What I would hope would not happen is people make a decision based upon misinformation or just being uncertain. And so now that the matter has been raised, we can have some conversation in terms of, you know, accurate and informed conversations, so we can actually do these things, and possibly even, if anybody's listening now, is to reach out and assist, because I know before we used to automate this process. You just go online, key in certain data, what's your name, whatever, your name, whatever, and so you might be able to get, again, a good estimate yourself to settle you down. You know what I mean? What's the impact going to be, and those type of things, and so it'll be huge.
Yes.
So you don't have this, you know, undue anxiety, and so I'll see if I can do that and go from there. Any final comments?
Well, no, I think I've said what I needed to say. Like you said, we haven't really scratched the surface, but I'm hoping that people got something out of this this evening. I'm not certain that all of those who are eligible will take it up.
Sure.
I think some people will pull back now because the picture is becoming a lot clearer, but I still get the sense that those who already made their minds are not going to
pull back.
move back,
Yeah.
because once you make that mental switch, then you're going to move in a different direction, and then you're going to see other things that's going to open up as a result of that.
Yes.
So for some, the information may have come a little too late, but for others, it was enough to cause them to hang on for a while and know that they don't have to rush this, because that's what it kind of may feel like. It's not what I intended to do, not what I wanted to do, but I think I have to because of the uncertainty.
Yes.
But if that uncertainty is cleared up, then they can delay that process.
Yeah, good. Okay. And to the listening audience, thank you for joining us here again on Magic 102.7 your Sunday evening. Tremendously enjoyed it. It's the first Sunday with daylight saving time kicking in, which I know people actually are out and about. Someone sent me a message actually out and about because of the daylight saving time, but we'll press our way on. And next week actually is going to be interesting because I was called about scams. And people are being scammed, quite a bit. And so I'll see if that's if I can make that concrete for next week, I'll do that. Otherwise, I'll continue on in my budget discussion because I find it quite interesting, as people know that's my background. And the show is entitled to improve or increase people's financial literacy. And so do those things. And now that I've been peaked, I'll talk some more about pensions. I think it's important. On that note, please, if you're out early or late, wear a high visibility vest or a light or something so people can see you, as I always say, because you want to have people see you as soon as possible to avoid any collision. Sometimes they're speeding, they may be under the influence, they may be on their phones, they may be whatever, tired. But we want to make sure that we can see you as soon as possible so that we can avoid you. And I still get surprised. People sometimes running or walking in the morning in complete black. You can't even see them. It's crazy.
I tell you, last week I'm driving. It was at night, and I just saw something moving in the trees. Person walking all black.
See? Ridiculous.
And I just thought of your comment at the end of the show, and I said, see, there's a reason he says that.
Yeah, every week to make sure. And because if you're driving, for example, you have to suddenly swerve, all these kind of things. And I just am amazed that people would leave him
all
before dark
black.
in complete black. You can't
All
see him.
black.
So, again, on that note, thank you again, Bermuda. Until next week, God willing, good night.
All day long. Bermuda Live on YouTube. Subscribe now.